I would like to introduce our staff and presenters. I am Michelle Papazian, District Specialist with Gifted Talented Programs Advanced Learning Options. Our amazing director is Arzi Galvez. Tonight's event would not have been possible if it wasn't for Ms. Galvez. She's the force behind all good things GATE. She made this event happen. She's a true supporter of our gifted, talented students. With me today are four of my colleagues that I would like to introduce. So let's start and say hello to Erin Yoshida Airmont, District Coordinator. Say hi, Erin.
Hello, thank you so much for coming.
Kevin Kilpatrick, District Coordinator. And Kevin, if you're not able to, I understand, but we have Kevin on chat duty as well in the Spanish room. Rosiana Force, District Specialist.
Hello.
And Susanna Farfari, District Coordinator, who's also in the Spanish feed translating for us. So if you can say hi, Susanna. If not, it's okay. Next, we would like you to know that there are many ways you can reach our office. Okay, please know that you may contact our office via email at any time. Again, that email address is gate@lausd.net. You can also call into the general GATE phone line, 213-241-6500, where a real human will actually answer. You can also call into the Choices and SAS phone line at 213-241-4177, where also a real human will answer. And lastly, you can always find information on our website, once again, at achieve.lausd.net/gate. The presentation slides shown tonight, including a link to additional handouts, are available to participants. To access them, please visit the Gifted Talented website, click on the Parents tab, and they will be posted immediately at the top of the page. After a month, should you want to access these resources again, they will be found under the Online Workshops tab, which is still under the Parents section. Our seminar tonight revolves around an important topic to all of us, a topic with many names, and tonight we will refer to it as distance learning. When the pandemic hit a year ago, students, parents, and teachers all found themselves in the same boat, in uncharted territories, wondering if there was a map or a manual we could use as we embarked on this new journey. We didn't have to wait long to hear the words, "We are in this together, and we will get through this together." Because as it turns out, there is a manual, the Distance Learning Playbook. And our guest speakers tonight, one of our guest speakers tonight, co-authored, one for parents, one for teachers, and one for leaders. Our guest speaker tonight is Dr. Douglas Fisher, a leading and prominent expert on teaching and learning. Dr. Douglas Fisher is a professor of educational leadership at San Diego State University and a leader at Health Sciences High and Middle College. He has served as a teacher, language development specialist, and administrator in public schools and nonprofit organizations. He has published numerous books on teaching and learning, in fact, too many to count, and has received many honorable accolades. Dr. Fisher is truly an asset to all of us. Presenting with Dr. Fisher tonight is Dr. Olivia Amador Valerio. Dr. Amador Valerio has been in education for over 24 years and has served as a teacher and a principal. She's a co-author and currently an educational consultant specializing in the development of effective teachers, improvement of student performance, and enhanced levels of family engagement. And last but not least, also presenting alongside Dr. Fisher is Dr. Nicole Law. Dr. Law is a passionate educator who provides relevant professional development to schools and districts across the nation. She's a former teacher, principal, and curriculum specialist. She specializes in creating a culture of learning and achievement for all. So without further ado, Dr. Fisher, take it away.
Hello, Los Angeles, my neighbor to the north. It is great to be here and to connect with you all. So we're going to talk a little bit about distance learning and hopefully we'll provide you some tips that you're going to find useful. No one has a crystal ball to foresee what the remainder of this school is going to look like. We have no idea what's coming, how we're going to revise, etc. But there is going to be some form of distance learning, no matter what we know about how the formats of school will evolve. Whether we do hybrid, high flex, simultaneous, blended, remote, or physical, we're going to have some element of distance learning for the foreseeable future. The reason I'm so passionate about this is that home and school are two of the stabilizing forces in a child's life. And the more we are cohesive and coherent and reinforcing one another, the more comforting it is for the child. When we join together, we are very powerful in helping young people grow up. We need you. We need your support. We need your guidance. We need your questions. We need your advocacy, because together, as Michelle said, we are better. I'm going to talk a little bit about some basics, and I don't mean to offend any of you. If this is redundant information, we will get to lots of information in our time together tonight. But some very basic information that has been gleaned from people who've experienced distance learning. Please have your children dressed and ready. If they could be ready for school, it's really, really useful. Have a morning, sorry. All of a sudden I got a bunch of allergies. Sorry about this. They need some routines. So one of my colleagues, one of my friends, literally has her child put on the backpack and walk to the learning environment with all the materials and supplies ready. If we could have some routines that send a message to your child's brain, it is now time for learning. I am dressed and I am ready and I have my routines completed. If we could have a learning environment, a stable place for your child to learn. If we could have a dedicated learning environment, they will actually learn more. The environment, in part, determines our behavior. And some of us are having, what we're learning here, one day we're learning there, one day we're learning there, and it doesn't help the learner learn how to learn. Your child does not have to be alone, but if away from distractions would be great. If you can have headphones, it's really useful. We know that when students have headphones on, they are more likely to focus on what's happening in their class. Olivia.
And to add to that, we also want to provide students with the tools that they need to be able to engage and be a part of that learning experience from home. And so it's helpful to, with organization, to help those supplies be readily available for students, so that way they can maximize the minutes that they share with their teacher, their classmates, and then also throughout that learning session.
And ideally, we don't want them jumping out in the middle of class and running to some part of the home and grabbing something and running back. So if we can have a dedicated workspace to help the environment get your kid to learn, where the supplies are there, it would be super helpful.
Absolutely. And then also, as you think about, okay, so once your child is in school, your children are in that space and place of learning, there are ways that we can remain connected with them and also show interest in the learning. So one way to be involved in your child's education is to ask them about their day. But here is the key. We want to ask about the learning rather than what it is that they're doing. So one way that we have been able to remain connected with your child's our students or your children's learning goals, the schoolwork, and then also how it connects to the learning. These 3 questions here help to create that space with your child so that you remain connected. So ask your child, what are you learning about today? Or tell me one thing you learned about today that you found interesting. And why are you learning that? How does it connect to what you learned yesterday? Another question is, well, how do you know that you've learned it? And again, this gets your child thinking about the experiences, and then also starts to assess how they are progressing, how they're feeling about school. And what you as a parent can then process as you're listening to how your child is responding to these questions is, does your child feel confident? Is your child expressing ideas about the experiences in a way that's understandable? Is it making sense? And then as a parent, you also are listening for perhaps your child is needing additional support, and or you're are concerned that your child is perhaps not even interested in answering the questions or confused about what's happening in the classroom. So these are tools that serve you as a way to stay connected with your child's teacher, and then also stay connected with how your child is experiencing learning in a remote setting. Next are a few examples of how teachers are using these questions to also remain connected with students. And don't worry, this one isn't backwards, it just starts off that way. But as you're listening to these students' responses, they're answering and speaking to those three questions that, again, that help them to assess and share out their experience about what it is that they're learning. And then as parents, we can also just see how it just activates, it sparks up a conversation about schooling altogether.
And the importance of it, which is to make each assignment or group equal and to eliminate biases. I learned it because I know that I can use it in the future, or I can maybe even use it now already, so that when it comes to getting to know or seeing a random experiment, I won't get fooled by it and know if everything's equal or correct, or if I'm ever going to make a random experiment myself, I can I can or I will know what to incorporate. I know I have learned this because I can explain to you what I'm learning in stats and the purpose of it and how we can use it in our life. We can use it outside of school, not just stats class. And that's it.
So here's another example. And
One thing I
again,
learned
Sorry, Olivia.
no, that's okay. Go ahead.
One thing I learned is about sensory details, and I feel like they're useful because when you can identify sensory details, you know how to you can get more involved in the reading, and it gives it more it's like a more in-depth meaning into the reading, and I know I'm learning because I can now, every time I read a story or watch a movie, I can identify sensory details very easily. Like, let's say if someone says it smells like something, I know it's a sensory detail. Or like if let's say a subtitle says like strange noises, I know what they are and why they're there, like to make it more suspenseful and stuff. And yeah, that's why I know that I'm learning.
So these two examples here, this is what we want our students and we want your children to experience, is in that reflection, in their ability to make some connections and talk about what it is that they've learned and how they know that they've learned it. This right here gives you a glimpse into their learning world. And then for teachers, it also provides them with information so that they can provide assistance as needed. And so as we're thinking about your children during their learning day, we also want to consider what's happening outside of the classroom and how we can support our children so that they are feeling good, feeling ready to face another day of learning. So this brings us to the subject of sleep. And so what we know is that children who do not get sufficient amounts of sleep learn less. And so what we want to do is just go back and think about the basics, as Dr. Fisher shared. How do we structure the home environment for a schooling environment? And this then is also extended to sleep. And over time, what we have found is that this shift in learning has perhaps contributed to inconsistent sleep routines for students. So what we want to pay attention to, again, is how are we keeping a structure around sleep, keeping the same bedtimes, and then also some routines that lead up to bedtime that are going to promote a sound sleep for children. And so then the question that is asked a lot is, well, how much sleep is a sufficient amount of sleep? So here is a breakdown from the Sleep Foundation that's helpful to us as parents. And we can start to think about, well, how much sleep is my child getting every night? Just because they're in bed doesn't mean they're actually asleep. So we want to check in with our students, with our children, pardon me. And then we also want to just take some steps to start bringing the day to a close. And what we know is that um, we want our children to have about a 2-hour break from technology until they get ready to go to bed. And so that's hard. We know it's hard and it's a challenge, but we also want our children to understand that it's part of a healthy lifestyle. So how do we then identify a schedule to just power down our technology, the devices, and just give our students a break and give them some time to just ease into that part of the evening and begin to relax so that way they can engage in restful sleep, not just being in their designated sleeping space. And I don't know about you all, but I have 2 kids at home that sometimes I catch them with their devices at night and I have to say, hand them over, right? Because we want our children to get a restful, good night's sleep. So as you look at these breakdowns here, which is very interesting, think about, how is your child doing? Are they getting enough sleep? And then the question is, how about you? How are you doing? We know that this virtual environment has really just um, a shift in the order in our homes. And so our goal is to, again, revisit and just help our children understand, our family members understand the importance of sleep and productivity.
There's a study in this National Sleep Foundation that says if your child is not going to sleep at the ideal time, and for elementary it's 8 o'clock is the ideal time, you take the time they are currently going to sleep minus the ideal time and figure out how many minutes that is. So if it's 2 hours, it's 120 minutes. You divide that by 10 days. So that'd be shaving off 12 minutes a day. So each day you go to sleep a little earlier by 12 minutes so you can get them in 10 days to the ideal sleep time. And sleep is how our brains consolidate. Sleep is how our brains help learning occur. And I see that there's a lot of young people who just don't go to sleep at a reasonable time, and then they're exhausted the next morning, and their brains haven't recovered from yesterday and aren't ready for today. And when you think about screen time, there's a lot of worry about how many minutes kids are on screens. And it used to be that the American Academy of Pediatricians said, here's how many hours or minutes we recommend by age level. They have withdrawn that. So the research on screen time is based on videos and games and things like that. We actually don't have good research evidence on how much screen time is good or bad for learning. We know the evidence when it comes to like watching videos, YouTube, playing games, those kinds of things. But we don't have really good evidence on academics and the use of screen time. So early in the pandemic, people were very worried about how many hours their eyes were on the screen. So the evidence is really not that the eyes are on the screen for a really long time. Here's a couple pieces. Having the blue light go off a few hours or an hour at least before they go to sleep will improve their sleep quality. That's an important message about screen time. And that if we can get their eyes to look away from the screen every once in a while so that their eye fatigue doesn't happen. If you're staring at the same distance hour after hour after hour, you end up with eye strain and headaches. And so we need to, the ophthalmologist said 20, 20, 20. Every 20 minutes, 20 seconds, look your eyes 20 feet away. And by the way, those of you who are working from a distance right now, I hope you're doing the same thing to take care of your eyes and your headaches. Every 20 minutes, 20 seconds, your eyes look 20 feet away, not staring at the screen for long periods of time. So what instead the pediatricians have said about screen time is ask yourself the following questions. Is your child playing? Is your child interacting with others? Do they do their chores? Do they talk to family members? If so, if the answers are yes, don't worry too much about screen time. If the answers are no, the screen time is probably interfering with their social development. A couple key messages about technology. Technology and screen time are not good or bad. It's how it's used. There are really good apps out there that get learning to happen, and some of them are not very good at all. Schedule tech breaks so your kid's not looking at a device, and don't have them leave a tech break from school to go to their phone. That's not helping them. And make sure your kid has some old school, old-fashioned paper books to read. It's actually good for their brains to not have the light all the time. What's the best thing? Let's put it in the chat. And if you could change the chat to panelists and attendees in that drop down, then everyone can see your answer. What's the best thing you've heard so far? Anything that's useful for you so far? Will you drop it in the chat for us? Kindles have a different kind of light, so it's a little less troubling. Headphones, screen time, sleep time. 2020, sleep time, screen time, the power of sleep. No more screens before sleeping, because that blue light, the devices that have blue light will interrupt your sleep. Eye fatigue from staring at the screen too long. Thank you. Headphones. Blue glasses are also helpful depending on how many hours they're there. There is published research on the blue glasses cutting the light out, but sometimes when kids have blue lights, then they're allowed to be on the technology more. So you have to think about that. Awesome. So some learning experiences. Luis, for the how many hours of screen time on video games, depending on their age, the pediatricians generally recommend less than 2 hours of time for videos and video games. So YouTube, video games, etc., like that. 10, yeah, less than 2 hours. Learning experience. So some basics, have a routines, have your kid dressed and ready. If you can have a dedicated workspace, if you work on sleep, you're halfway there. Because if they're sleeping and they have a routine and they have a dedicated workspace, they're going to focus a lot more. So there's this model of engagement that's been published. It came out in March of 2020. And you notice that it's passive in the middle and goes active in both directions, because children can be actively disengaged. They can also be actively engaged. Each move to the right corresponds with an increase in the amount of learning kids do. So if you have kids who are currently withdrawing and you get them to participating, they're going to learn more. From participating to investing, learn more. We want to get them all the way to driving, where they set their own goals, where they ask for feedback, and where they self-assess. So these are the questions you can talk about with your child. Where were you in your own level of engagement today? Were you just compliant and participating? Did you ask your own questions? Did you set goals for yourself? So we'll take a look at a classroom video of a teacher engaging students in an online learning test. These are first graders.
The word is mat. Mat. What is the beginning, the middle, and the ending sounds in mat? Mat. Thank you, Ibrahim. Thank you, Leah. Thank you, Dariana. Thank you, Dominic. Mat. What do you hear? Mat. You can always stretch the word. Mat. Here we go. Mat. Good. Let's try another one. Go ahead and erase it.
So teachers are engaging kids in learning. And I saw the chat about sensory details, and that's kind of an interesting thing. You know, if you're a pilot and you're trying to describe something to a passenger, to the air traffic controllers, to the flight, if you don't have sensory details and you're not explaining it, how will they really know what you're really deeply talking about? I can just see a pilot with no sensory details trying to explain the experience to a co-pilot, to a flight attendant, to the control tower, and them saying like, well, tell me what you mean. What's happening out there? When you say it's rocking a little bit, what do you mean by that? So I think that we can always think about how do we make learning relevant for learners? And I put this in the chat. This is a little secret we don't like to talk about too much in education. But Graham Nunhall did a big study. It's been replicated 3 times since then. And on average, 40% and up to 50% of the instructional minutes are devoted to things that students have already learned. That's a challenge. The reality is a lot of kids know a lot of stuff, but they know different things. And so what happens is we try to cover the curriculum and we end up teaching things, quote unquote, that they've already learned. This is a challenge. And in distance learning, we have to reduce the amount of time that we focus on what students already know. So as parents, I hope that gives you a little comfort if there are fewer instructional minutes for your kids, because a whole bunch of those minutes last year, a year ago right now, were not spent on things that they were actually learning. And we don't love to talk about this, but it is in the research and it's pretty clear. Another 9% of our minutes on average are spent with students waiting for something to happen. Attendance is being taken, whatever. So, about 50% of the minutes, we're not really building students' current learning. If I could ask you all a favor, this would be a great thing to work on with your own kids. Deliberate practice has a strong research effect. So if you look at the middle, 40.40, that's the average effect or impact for everything we do in education. So every kind of 300 things we could do in education, we can scale them on how powerful they are in accelerating learning. And you can see that getting students to practice has a really good effect, an accelerating effect. And when we look at the research on deliberate practice, and you all know this, you used to drive your kids to sports events or piano practice or whatever. We've all been convinced that if you want to play soccer on Saturday, you have to go to all the practice. We know that, we get that. The same is true when it comes to mathematics and reading and writing and thinking scientifically, exploring the world of arts and history. Practice is really important. So here's the model of deliberate practice. It's not just boring, repetitive work, it's being deliberate. So let's start at the right. That child needs a mental model of expertise. I think that's why so many kids will practice soccer, because they have in their mind what it looks like, sounds like, and feels like to play soccer. And we need to help them, we teachers, need to help them develop that mental model of expertise in the content we're teaching. Because when they have a mental model of expertise, they are way more likely to respond to the feedback they get. And they're way more likely to focus on the practice activities and work towards a goal and push themselves and struggle a little bit. We need all of this to happen, because instruction only gets us part of the way there. So if you look at learning, learning occurs across phases. The first phase is acquiring or acquisition. We acquire skills, we acquire concepts, we acquire knowledge. And by and large, acquisition occurs through instruction. That's an instructional experience and you acquire a skill or a concept, etc. But to move from acquisition to consolidation, where you can do something consistently, requires that you practice it. To move from consolidation to maintenance requires that you practice. And then to move from maintenance to transfer or generalization requires more practice. See, if we don't get students, if we don't get young people practicing, we only get to the phase of acquisition. And then next year, we spend time reteaching what they learned the previous year, because we didn't get all the way to the transfer level. So we started having children, young adults, teach back. In this case, he's teaching his sister. They can teach the class. How do we get them to teach to you so that we can get more opportunities for practice? And I know we'll talk about overhelping in a little bit, but if you can have your teenager, your 5-year-old, teach back to you, teach to the dog, teach to the neighbor, teach to someone on Zoom, That's another kind of practice. So let's watch Aiden.
Sister, you're gonna be my student today. I'm gonna teach you how to solve 3 plus 4 equals something. 3 is a adding. 4 is a adding 2. We need to put circles up the numbers. We can learn like that. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. How many are there? I'm gonna count them for you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The name of the 7 is a thumb.
And this first grader teaching his sister is getting some good practice. And by the way, because mom took a little clip, the teacher was able to see, this is what stuck. This is what didn't stick. This is where I need to go next. What can you do? So in the chat again, what can you do to ensure your child gains sufficient practice to ensure the learning sticks? 50% instruction, right? We got to get instruction, good, high quality, amazing learning experiences. But practice makes the learning permanent, not perfect. And they forget and they don't generalize. So what can you do? Teach back, thank you. What can you do to make sure your kid gets sufficient practice? This is where we need you, because we used to have them a lot of hours and we have a fewer hours now. And we need some help getting kids to practice and do the tasks that their teachers are asking them. What else could we do? Thank you. Teach me. Awesome. Right. Talk at dinner about what you learned today. Why is that important to know that? How do you know that you learned it? What evidence do you have? Review questions. Have conversations with your family. Play games. Ask them about their practice. Did your teacher ask you to practice any of these things? And do you know why? I think we haven't talked with young people enough about the reason we assign practice work. It's not just to mess up their evenings. It's making learning stick. Awesome. I'd also like to comment, and so, sometimes it's just a bunch of homework, which is not that useful. We could comment about the volume of reading. There is a significant value in the volume of reading students do. Reading volume is the measure of how many minutes eyes are on text. It is highly correlated to overall achievement. In fact, it's one of the best predictors of student achievement is how many minutes they read. Highly correlated. In the before times, effective schools and effective classrooms, 30 years of research on this, averaged about 90 minutes a day eyes on text. Across the school day, not just independent reading, but reading in science, reading in social studies. Eyes on text, 90 minutes a day. In distance learning, synchronous learning, we're not getting the same amount of reading. They have to read at home. It's one of the most effective things we could do of having students reading at home. And I got a message in here about subtitles of TV. There's actually published research that keeping the captioning on your television helps young people. Because their brains just keep reading it. So actually keeping the captions on is a useful thing. But we have to figure out how to maintain the volume of reading that students are doing. Because in school right now, they're not getting their 90 minutes. Most of them are not. So parents, if we can get them to practice and we can get them to read, we're going to be doing some good things for them.
Then if we can get our students to talk, we build that oral language. So the value of talking. And when we think about speaking with our young people, it's essential not only for their academic and cognitive development, but it's important for their emotional development. And remember, I said speaking with and not to. So as we think about speaking to build academic and their emotional well-being, when we think about, and we can advance, by the time our students, our young people are 6 months old, they can already discern our language. So when we think about having conversations, we say baby talk, and we're talking even when they're in the womb. They can discern conversations, and we're building their oral language. When we think about having conversations with our students, be it young and old, we're making a difference with them. We're building their skills, we're building their emotional connections, and we're building that cognitive aspect of who they are. When we think about in the pandemic, our child, they need us more than ever. And we know that. We know that our conversations have been really lost. And when we think about having conversations with our children, we're making a difference. We're having conversations about them making decisions. We're having conversations with them about solving problems, sharing their interests. And when we think about opportunities that have been lost because we are spinning plates, and when we think about trying to juggle everything that's going on in our lives, in our students' lives, our conversations are definitely struggling. So we identified, and Doug and Nancy and Rosalind identified some ways that we can take action to bring back those conversations, bring back the joy in our homes, and considering the intentionality of what we do and what we say with our children, with those that we love. And so some of those actions are, and so this is a fun opportunity to think about apples and oranges. So each family, in each person in your family, they name something that they saw or experienced for that day that was either positive, it was an apple, or one thing that was maybe challenging, it was an onion. So even thinking about the realia, getting an apple, getting an onion, and if we don't have the apples and the onions, let's have a picture, pull it up on our phone and ask our students, what was something that was positive today that you experienced? And if it was challenging, it was that onion. We know that onions sometimes make you sniffle or cry. The other really cool action that I absolutely love is post a question of the day on the fridge in the morning and then talk about it that evening. So our young people, they already know, what question am I gonna think about? So all of these questions can be on the fridge, and we can even get our young people to think about which question that they wanna answer. And so you see all types of questions from what do people like about you? What's your first memory as a little kid? If you were a pro wrestler, what would your interests be? Entrance. What would a walk-up music be? You know, what would you wait for in line? A long line. What is it that you would wait for? So these opportunities to build oral language and conversations with our young people. Another idea is the family photo of the week. Get out those photo albums. Share a photo of a family event. Ask your child what they remember about that day, what they remember about the people. Bring out those old photos and have conversations around it. How much fun and connection would that be with each of the family members? And bringing in that laughter. And then the last tip, the song of the day. So each family member, they choose a song of the day, and then we play it. And then we ask our child, what is it that you like about that song? Why did you choose that song? Tell me a little bit about the connection. The song of the day. Think about the music that we'll probably be hearing from some of our teenagers. but asking them, why did you choose that song? Building their oral language and building those connections with them through conversations. So as we think about, you can advance. What's your favorite ways of checking in with your child and getting them to talk about their experiences, their ideas, how their day went, some of the things that's on their hearts and their minds. So what are some favorite ways that we can put in the chat that you love in just checking in with your child? What are some ideas? They are, Rachel. These are some really good ideas. I love the family photo. Comics, definitely. Just answering any questions that they have, absolutely. What is the kindest thing that someone did for you today or that you did for someone today? Absolutely, having some of those questions for them so they can share.
Did you see the meme a day?
No, oh, how much fun is
really
that?
Fun. Yes.
I caught on to the dance party.
Yes.
Dance party every day to go with the song of the day.
And
I like
morning
the
walk.
morning walks. Yes, Pam. How special. Walk and talk.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, good, bad, kind. What is something good that happened, something bad that happened, something kind you did for someone? Oh, I love it.
Ay, Manuela, laughing every day, reír cada día. Finding that humor.
Yes.
That makes your heart, yeah, all of this makes your heart smile. Those
I
are the
know.
moments we're looking for.
They make me miss my son being little and in school, Olivia. 23, we don't get too much talking going in. Going on.
I got an 11-year-old and a 17-year-old, so I know my days are numbered too.
Oh.
Oh, a gratefulness cube. Love it.
Love that. Yeah.
Oh, yes, I've heard that one. A rose and a thorn of the day.
Yeah. Marbles in the jar.
Oh.
Nice.
So another request, another favor, is to really think about the value of productive struggle. If you're not struggling, you're probably not learning. Now, I did not say struggle to the point where you put your hoodie up and your head down and you cry. We want some struggle. That's how we learn. Productive struggle, grappling, is good for our brains. It's really good for our brains. And it's a deeper experience with learning when you struggle through something. And you look back and you say, I did it. I got it. I didn't give up. Unfortunately, a lot of us are not really comfortable watching our own children struggle. The teachers are, because we have years of watching kids struggle and scaffolding and supporting and guiding. And then sometimes when families see children struggle, they jump in and they offer answers. Well-meaning, well-intended efforts. And now everyone's tweeting about it and Instagramming it and confessing. So I want to talk about this for just a minute. If you are overhelping, giving quiz answers, shouting out answers, I know, right? The teacher probably did not say, your mom is right. The teacher probably said, your mom is right. But I know you mean well, and I appreciate your effort to support your child. But helping them by giving them answers, shouting out answers in Zoom is really, really a dangerous path to head down. So you can provide all the hints you want. When your child is doing independent work, hint, hint, wink, wink, fantastic. Thank you, so appreciate it. But when you tell your child the answer, you run the risk of creating learned helplessness. And learned helplessness, there's never been a child born in the history of the world who had learned helplessness. Never. It is always induced by well-meaning adults, teachers, and parents and family members who overhelp and give the answer can create adult dependency, also known as learned helplessness. So we want to be really careful. We want to give hints and guidance and corrections, but not the answer. And if your child is still struggling so much after the hints, make an appointment with a teacher, but try not to tell the answers. Here's how to guide rather than tell. I know this is fairly technical. I'm going to give you a second to kind of read through this and for translation. And you may not have time to do all of this. We appreciate any time you can devote. But when your child is stuck, notice what they know and what they don't know. Their incorrect answer could have a whole lot of correct inside of it, and it might uncover what went wrong. And then ask the W questions: who, what, where, when, why, to get their thinking going. And if that doesn't work, try reminding them of something that they might be temporarily forgetting. And I know I'm asking you to do some more, teaching moves. And if they're still stuck, shift their attention. Let's reread the second paragraph. Let's look at that image one more time. And if you must give them the answer, explain your own thinking. Here's how I did it. Here's how I knew how to do it. And I know there's all kinds of tension. Mom, you did it wrong. Grandma, that's not the way my teacher did it. I understand that. But if we can avoid telling kids answers and instead guide their thinking and support their learning and prompt and cue without telling them, they will be way better off. Because I promise you, it is way harder to undo learned helplessness than recover any unfinished learning. So far, the evidence is pretty clear. We are not seeing huge learning loss. We don't see that, the learning loss. Do we see some unrealized potential? Yes, but it's not like the 6th graders are all of a sudden performing like 3rd graders. But I promise you, if we create learned helplessness as a result of this pandemic, it will take years to undo that over helping. We've got to guide students, children, support them, give them hints, all the hints you want. And if it gets to the point where they can't answer and they can't do it with the hints, call it a day and get the teacher to help. If your child struggles so much with your help and your support, talk to the teacher, develop a plan. That child's teacher may not be aware of the level of struggle and how it has moved to frustration and defeat. But really think about the role that learned helplessness is playing in children's learning. So another chat opportunity. How do you respond when you see your child struggle with schoolwork? How does that emotionally feel for you? How do you know when to intervene? And yes, you can confess that if you've overhelped, it's totally fine. Now we're going to move to more prompting and cueing, more guiding and not telling, and then a relationship with the teacher. There's a need to help. Yes, some people. We don't like to watch our own children struggle, and I recognize that. It's super hard. Yes. How do you think you can solve this problem? What will you do when you get stuck? Yeah. And sometimes the extended family ends up overhelping because they're not sure what to do and they want to make sure the work gets done. We cannot define school as simply getting work done. And we should be recognizing effort. We should be recognizing persistence, even if they don't solve it the right way. Yes, I saw in the chat, the growth mindset. Not yet, but you'll get there. That's what success will eventually look like. Have the child explain that to you, and sometimes they uncover their own thinking in just doing it. Allow them to make some mistakes in their homework. Homework is for practice in the first place. And we need to be careful, and get in our minds, struggle is important. It's a valued part of the learning. Now, productive failure and unproductive failure are different. Productive struggle is actually really good for their brains. So I'm trying to give you some confidence to allow your kid to struggle. Don't jump in and tell them the answers. Don't whisper quiz questions to them. Let them be wrong every once in a while, because errors are opportunities to learn. And we need to normalize that errors. And if you're having a really hard time not overhelping, put headphones on your kid, and then you won't hear the lesson and try to overhelp. If that's what it takes, do it.
As we think about providing guidance for our young people, for our children, we also have to think about their well-being. And when we think about their well-being and a sense of belonging, we know that we need you. We need you in their lives, having those conversations with them, offering support, and allowing those opportunities so your child can succeed in school and in life. So well-being of your family, it starts with you. So we're hoping that you're taking care of yourself. You have that work-life balance. You're able to take those pauses, take breaks in between work, and really taking care of yourself, because if you're not okay, how can you provide what your child needs in the home? So we hear it all the time when we fly. We haven't flown for a while, team. It's been a minute since we've flown, but we hear, put your oxygen mask on first. So parents and families and loved ones, please make sure you're taking care of yourselves. As you think about emotional check-ins, let's have some emotional check-ins. You said a few of them earlier with advancing talk and promoting oral language in your family, but let's do some fun emojis. What emoji is exemplifying how you're feeling today, how your week is going, and then share why. So identifying, how are you feeling? Your emotional well-being. And let's create this as an opportunity to check in with our loved ones, our children, and letting them know how mom is feeling, how dad is feeling, how grandma and auntie, how we're feeling. And so checking in emotionally. Yeah, a good day of learning and a nice call to mom. Absolutely. Thinking about those opportunities to engage and to just take care of yourselves. Yes, Pilates, absolutely. Nice. I'm loving that you are actually checking in with me. Number 6, you know what? At first I was feeling like a 4 earlier today. And now being here with you, I am a number 2. Crazy busy day, but productive. Yes, Viviana. Yes, number 4. I love it. I love it. Oh my goodness, Susan. 2, 6, 5, all good feelings. I like it.
And Janet said she had some struggles and some reading frustrations, but we're happy you're there.
We could create this with our children so many different ways. What superhero are you feeling like? What's your superpower?
Nice.
Yeah, the importance of listening to our children. when they have, yeah, a day like a number and they're feeling like a number 7. Absolutely. Providing those opportunities to check in and check on what's in on their hearts and in their minds. Absolutely.
Awesome.
Nice. Great. You'll have to let us know how your students did. Yeah, add those check-ins to your slides if you're teachers. So parents, you bring so much joy to your child's life and so much to their life, and we don't want you to be their teachers. We want you to provide a loving space for them, to bring joy into their hearts and develop opportunities to engage with them in fun ways like you're talking about, taking those picnics and playing games, video games with them. It's that quality time, helping them, giving them support as they learn and grow. We don't expect you to be your child's teacher. We just want you to provide that loving space for them. And as we think about, and we can advance, Doug. And one more time.
Sorry, reading the chat.
Oh, that's all right. I know. So when we think about a sense of belonging, we know that it starts with the social emotional aspect of who our students are, our children, who they are. And it's not about soft skills. It's about building the whole child. And we're building that sense of belonging, not just in school, but we're building it in our communities, and it starts in our families. And so when we think about creating that sense of belonging, our schools, we have lost some of that. Think about, we don't have the spirit weeks the way we used to, the pep rallies, the school celebrations, the class parties, community service opportunities. And so when we think about some of those things that we've lost, how can we create this feeling that schools once created when we were able to be face to face, that really created that community of learners and created that sense of belonging? Yeah. And so when we think about our students have been impacted, they have been impacted emotionally, socially, which impacts their academics. They have lost so much. And so thinking about how can we create opportunities that will fortify them in the homes, and having these conversations with them, checking in, letting them know, you know what, mom had a pretty bad day today too, but guess what? We're in this together and we're gonna overcome together. And we're here for one another. As we think about socialization, we know that we have to encourage our children to join virtual groups that are out there. Schools are doing virtual groups. They're having pickup parties. They're logging on and having class hours. They're playing games and having game nights. And so when we think about what we've lost in terms of socialization, we have to, you say, what's a pickup party? A pickup party is awesome. And I'm going to let Doug share with you what a pickup party is, because they have them all the time.
So yeah, so we call it pickup party to make fun. And the staff come, whatever school, the families, when they do their drive-throughs, open their trunks, and we put supplies in, for learning things. And the teachers are there clapping and waving, and we make it a big deal so that we see each other. And so, and we call it that pickup party. So we're picking up our class materials for the 2-week period or month period. It's been really, really powerful. And Nicole, as I was listening to you, I just have to think about this. Academically, kids are doing pretty well. Are there some kids that aren't logging in? Of course. Are there some kids who are frustrated with breakout rooms? Of course. But by and large, they're still learning. And this slide keeps getting to me every time I see it. How do we make sure that the young people still have socialization opportunities? Mm-hmm. And they have time to just be kids and talk, age appropriate for whatever, they're 5 or 9 or 15, and just be that as well in a way that keeps them safe.
Yeah. Yeah. Even having play dates, that keeps them safe, right? Coordinate that with family members, with friends, those play opportunities to get together. And even if it's, I mean, we don't want to say another Zoom, but some, even opportunities to talk with their friends, they don't have that. And they're missing it. So why is this important in distance learning? It is because it has impacted our well-being, our social and our emotional aspects of who we are. We are struggling. They have been impacted. And so we have to create those opportunities for students to socialize and get together with those and make those friendships, keep those friendships.
Nicole, one of the techniques that I've observed teachers for both my children here at home is that they will just have time to bring your favorite snack, and we're just going to talk
Yeah.
about anything that interests you. And then recently, they're now pulling out topics to talk about from a mystery bag.
Nice.
And so again, I'm noticing teachers just elevate it. The more students start to feel comfortable, then the teachers, both of them, and this is elementary and secondary, and it just makes my heart smile to see my kids smiling here at home while they're logged on. And so right away, I just send an email to the teachers and just thank them so much, because as a mom, like you said, I'm worried about the social aspect of it. And Doug, as you said, we know that kids are learning, but we need for them to just have some time during their day, not feel like learning, and just feel a little bit like I'm hanging out. They're used to hangouts. So now food, just bring your favorite snack. And then they start saying, so what are you eating today? What are you eating today? And then they start tallying, okay, how many of you brought Cheetos? How many of you brought Doritos? And so whatever the teachers can do to just bring meaning to it, it has changed the mood and the tone around the house.
Yeah. We
sure.
did not have our big family get together this summer. And so we decided to have it virtually. And one of the things we did for the young people, we got together and had a pizza party. So we had to buy all of the ingredients, whatever the ingredients we wanted. And so we were on Zoom, and everyone, they had their toppings, and we baked our personal pan pizzas, and then we ate them together. And I said, well, maybe one Sunday we can have a Sunday party, and you bring your favorite toppings and we can eat the Sundays together. But the kids loved it. So, it's about being creative. When I think about distance learning, showing that sense of creativity and just bringing, again, laughter and joy and that socialization back into our children, our young people.
And we're still doing spirit days. I mean, our teachers are sending us, this is our spirit week. And so, and now they're encouraging us parents to dress up. And so, have to model it. It's like, okay. So this is a way for us to just connect, be that connected with our students, and then just try to, again, bring some humor, bring some joy, bring some light.
Exactly.
Nancy's grandkids, Nancy has 4 grandkids. I think you all know that. The two of you know that. And they started watch parties on Netflix with their friends, that Netflix feature. They finally are having something that is much more social. They pause it, they chat with each other, they play it. Someone has the controls to stop the movie where they all are at the same place. They have had so much fun with the watch parties. It's just one more way of engaging them. When I saw the one around social emotional learning, I think this is going to be a huge need whenever we return to school. Is we're going to have to spend some lessons on friendship development, social skills, relationships, sense of self. We're going to have to do that. And we can do it through books that we read. There's plenty of research evidence that says young people develop their social emotional skills in part by projecting into characters that they're reading about. But we're going to have to give teachers permission to spend time on the social and emotional development and reconnecting kids with other kids. It's going to be an important part of how we rebuild this and rebound from it later.
So we know that schools are doing their best to fill that void, right? So ask your child about clubs that are at school, the mentoring opportunities, extracurricular opportunities, and student government. And so, like we heard Olivia say, we're still having spirit days. So let's have those conversations with our children and say, what's going on? How are you engaged in school? Are you doing some of these Zoom parties that they're having at schools? Do you have a pen pal? Let's bring back pen pals. So some of the ways that we can take action, we've already shared a few in the chat. So let's make sure that we're asking our children to take an inventory of all the activities that they've enjoyed, past and present. So what is it that you like to do? And then let's learn about those extracurricular opportunities that the school is offering, those clubs. What are they? And then if you're able, volunteer your talents to a partner with the school. And you know what? Have your child do something kind for maybe a classmate, their teacher. And we all can collectively, we can share some fun ideas because the wisdom is in the Zoom room and we see it all in the chat, and just having opportunities to think about that socialization for our children to bring back joy and happiness and just that spirit of connection. So this is your opportunity to chat. What successes are you experiencing with socialization for your child? What are some of the creative ideas? And then what extracurricular or mentoring experiences are available in your school and your community?
Friendships. It's in all of our minds, right? Friendships for our children. We worry that perhaps this is just weighing down on their outlook. They're missing their friends. These restrictions, living in a bubble, trying to keep safe, all of that. It's a very real part of all children's reality. And so what are some of the ways that we can just bring positive attention towards what it means to be a friend? What do you value? What are the qualities that you value in those friendships? Because we know that friendships are a fundamental aspect of the human experience, even for the grown-ups. And so then this is causing us to go back and think about, well, what are those gateways to connectivity? And how can we reach a nice balance? And so here are just examples from voices of students who have taken the time to just express what it means to be a friend, have a friend. And what for me, what I have learned is that I don't need my children to have hundreds of friends. I just want my children to experience those healthy friendships that are going to help them feel connected, help them just feel like they are part of something special, help them feel like they've got someone who gets them. And so whether it's secondary or it's elementary school, we want our children to think about, so what steps are you taking to reach out and connect with someone? Perhaps someone new. So we think about, well, how are our children making friends? And how do they maintain the friendships they currently have? And so here are just some examples of how students view friendships. And so here, Jake in secondary, right? He understands that friends help you grow. They broaden perspectives. And that is, again, part of just that evolution that occurs when those connections are healthy connections. And so how do we then open up opportunities for our children to remain connected with their friends? Or perhaps how do we think about, okay, well, who do we have access to? And how do we just ignite a possibility of forging and forming some friendships? In the next example, this is an elementary example. And so the message in elementary is that we want to be friends with everybody. And the perception is that you're not friendly with everybody, then perhaps there's something wrong with you, right? And so again, how do we get our students and our children to think about, well, What are those qualities that make a good friend? And what happens when those friendships go south, when they don't work out? What contributes to that? How might have you contribute to that? And one thing that we want our children to just think about is, all right, so when things go wrong and I am at fault, how do I make it better? And so again, it's getting back to that whole social emotional side um, to conflict with somebody else. And what we've learned is that um, learning how to apologize is a skill that we must practice. And so um, t- spending more time with my kids here at home made me realize that my kids really don't apologize when they should. And when they do, it's not really an apology. So we thought, okay, let's learn how to apologize. Let's break it down. What does it mean? Because again, we want our children to learn the skills of, um, this is how I maintain those healthy relationships. And we're all human. We all make mistakes. And when mistakes happen, here are some steps that we can take to make things better. And so when we started to break down the anatomy of an apology, my kids and students that I work with, we started to practice. We'll say what you're sorry for and say why it was wrong. And then accept responsibility. And then ask the other person, how do I make this better? So again, we're talking about maintaining these friendships at a distance. And then also commit to that, your friend or the person that you had the conflict with, that I'm committed to not doing this again because I've learned, the lesson here. And then also asking for forgiveness. And we want to also thank the person for hearing you out. So these are just some of the ways that that children can think about, okay, and then when I'm faced with a challenge or faced with conflict, how do I express what I'm feeling? How do I name it? What are some ways that I can make amends? What are some ways that I can express my feelings when someone has hurt my feelings or perhaps caused some confusion in my life? And so the gateways to these friendships, not all social media is bad, right? So we want to also think about and just talk about how can we use some social media avenues to maintain these friendships. And so before March 13th, I didn't know what Zoom was. My kids didn't know what Zoom was. Now Zoom is a lifeline, right? But we're going back to FaceTime. We're going back to different social media outlets to, with intentionality, schedule some time just to connect with each other. And that right there, again, just reframing our thinking around, I don't need my child to have a dozen friends or 20 friends. I just really want my child to think about those friendships and how important and they are, and who is that friend, who is that maybe couple of friends that um, bring a smile to the day. So again, maintaining those friendships at a distance, it's important, and it worries us, it keeps us awake at night. It's all about that socialization. So how can we again just help our students, help our children think about ways to keep those friendships healthy and strong, but then also when things go south, teaching our kids and our students some techniques to be able to make a situation better, which brings us to conflict, right? And what we know, again, we model it for our students, for our children. We want them to understand that conflict happens, it's normal, but there are steps that we can take to think about it through the lens of, I want to make this better, I want to fix it. And it takes practice. So again, we can think about, all right, so how do we handle conflict? What is our reaction? How do we take steps to work through it? And so we think about, how are we going to talk about this? How do we name our feelings? So back to the emoji slide, where how are you feeling today, right? These are techniques that we use. We name our feelings and then we start to process through it. And then our goal is to work to understand what caused the conflict and also to understand the person that you're in conflict with. So one way that we could approach this is to ask, when you said this, what did you mean by that? And spark up a discussion around it, a conversation that's going to, again, lead to resolution. Or another question that can be asked is, can you tell me more about why this is so important to you? So that way there's an awareness and there's an intent for a positive resolution. These are challenging conversations. And now that we're observing firsthand how our children are engaging in this environment, we want to also make that connection, that personal connection with our own children, and support them and help them along the way. And here's another technique that it helps to just get you in the headspace when things go wrong, right? That, okay, mistakes happen. There are ways that we can fix it. It may take time, and that's okay. And when you're ready to talk about it, we'll go ahead and lean into a conversation. And sometimes we just need to be close to our children and they learn to figure it out. What we want to do is we want to maintain that trust, and we want our children to feel like that we are someone that they can depend on, that will work to help provide some assistance when challenges arise. And it takes, again, it's not something that's going to be solved right away, but it's going to take some time, and we want to give our children and our students that space. And so the technique that works for all, for students, for children, for grown-ups, is on the next slide, and it's the SEAL technique, right? And this strategy here just means, the acronym stands for stop, explain, affirm, and admit, and lock, right? So this one here, again, take a breath. Right now, we are just so connected with our senses that when we start to feel emotions that get us off balance, we want to remind ourselves, okay, let me just clear my thoughts. Let me take a breath. Let me connect with how I'm feeling. And then that way you create the space to decide, okay, what's the first thing I need to do? What are some steps that I can take to begin to understand the conflict, understand the problem, explain, right? Let's put into words. Name it. The first step in just understanding is to name, what is it that is causing this confusion, that's causing me to feel this way? And then think about, okay, what can I do instead to begin to regain some balance? When you're working with the person you're in conflict with, that affirm and admit, again, talk it out, and approach it through the lens of, let's try and understand this. And these are lessons for all children, where it's not about being right, it's about making it right together. So you're working, you're coordinated, because these friendships or these relationships are important to you. They're a lifeline in your life. And then lock. And that right there, if things after attempts do not work out, right? And that right there's a signal that perhaps we still need some time to be ready to do the work. And so a pause is okay. It's okay to say, okay, I need some space. I'm going to just walk away from the situation. It's not healthy for either one of us, and we'll try again later. And that right there, that's courage. That's being brave. That's what we want our children to understand, that sometimes time is also necessary to be able to resolve some conflict. But what we don't want to do is ignore it, or just say, not give it the importance. What we want to do is, again, assist our children through these processes and let them see how we handle the situation, empathize with them. Share some examples of how when you were in a situation like that, the steps you took to resolve it. Again, we're in this together, and we are better together, and helping our children make sense of emotions, make sense of a situation, recognize and identify some steps to be able to push through those difficult moments, and then also reflect back and think about, wow, what did I learn from that experience? What did I gain from that experience? What did I lose? from that experience. Those are all healthy processes that are going to lead to that evolution of just feeling connected, feeling in control, and then also having some tools to be able to manage through those situations when their life, their world is out of order, right? So again, what is the order that I need in my life? What steps do I take to regain it when it's off balance? And then how do I also make the connections with those people that matter the most to me? So SEAL strategy begins with taking that deep breath.
One last bit of advice for you. I don't work for LA Unified. I work in San Diego. And I recognize that all of us have our frustrations. All of us have some experiences we just wish were different. And if you air a lot of that in front of your child, you're going to compromise your child's belief. And as I said in the beginning, we have to come together as a united front. We're partners in this. That doesn't mean you can't air your grievances and you can't explain what's wrong and what you would like. But when your child hears the ongoing criticism of the teacher, of the school, that child's confidence starts to drop. So just be aware when you criticize, your kids are listening. So what's the best thing you learned this evening? I hope it was something you can take with you for your kid. We'd love to see some chat from you all. What's the best thing that you're taking with you tonight? And thank you all for hanging out with us. Thank you, Los Angeles, for hosting us. Olivia and Nicole, it is great to see you. Thank you for the SEAL comment. Anita, thank you for your comment about the webinar. Thank you, Christina.